going on, guys? PC here, and welcome to another episode of I'm Playing. Today's episode is a little bit different than normal, as I'm not going to be doing live commentary. And the reason for that is these games don't really suit well to live commentary, mainly because they're short, they're a little bit buggy, and they have a lot of load screens. So what I decided to do was just record some footage ahead of time, and just record some narration and talk a little bit about them as you're seeing the footage. So, what I'm looking at today is called the Epitech Collection. This is a collection of 4 different games that were developed in 2002 as student projects for the Epitech School in Paris, France. These were developed in the Epitech Console Laboratory, which is the game development division. So what they did was they took all their students and they separated them into 11 different groups. Each one of these groups would develop their own game, and they had a choice between either developing for the Game Boy Advance or the Dreamcast. Dreamcast actually proved to be the more popular choice, as 6 out of the 11 games were for the Dreamcast. All 6 of these games were developed using the Iris 3D engine, which is a game development engine that was created specifically for the Epitech Console Laboratory, and was eventually released as an open source project. Out of the 6 games, only 4 were actually released. These games include Whatta Gaza, Dream On, Fantasy Force, and Chicken Chase. So in this video, I'm going to go through each one of these games, show you a bit of gameplay, and give you my opinion about the game, and maybe even a grade, since these are technically school projects. So the first game we're taking a look at is called Whatta Gaza. It's a multiplayer party game that's essentially a very simplistic clone of Mario Party. The game takes place on a game board where your goal is to make it to the end before the other players. Every move that you make in the game will initiate a mini-game, and winning this mini-game will allow you to move ahead 1 space on the board. The mini-games, unfortunately, are not that varied. They're all pretty much exactly the same, where the goal is to kill all the other players. But depending on which mini-game you get, the way you kill the other player will be slightly different. Say in one mode, your goal is to kill the other player with a gun that appears on the map. You actually have to pick up the gun and use it, and there's only one at a time. There's another mini-game where your goal is to shove the other player off the edge. And there are other goals in the other mini-games as well, which I don't completely understand. I don't think I played the game long enough to actually figure out every single one of them, but they're all pretty much exactly the same, which is unfortunate. It doesn't really give the game a whole lot of variety. But that's really all there is to the game. There's another mode where you can just pick which minigame you want to play if you don't want to go and play the board game. But overall, the game is not a bad attempt at a Mario Party clone, especially considering the time that they had to develop this. Unfortunately, it does have issues like the hit detection, especially when it comes to the gun. It can be very difficult to hit the other player. But overall, it's not a bad game, and I would probably give it a B. So the next game in the collection is called Fantasy Force. This is a side-scrolling beat-em-up / fantasy RPG type of game. The first thing you'll do in the game is select between a male and female character. The male is your typical knight with a sword, and the female is a mage who can shoot fireballs. So the actual game itself, unfortunately, only consists of 3 screens, the first of which has literally nothing on it. There's a guy waving you on at the end. That's literally about it. When you proceed to the next screen, you'll come across some gargoyle-type creatures that you have to defeat. You can kill these guys with either your standard move, which when you pick the male character, he'll swing his sword, and the female character will shoot fireballs. But you also have secondary moves as well. The male character has a more powerful sword swing, and the female character has this big blue fireball that you can shoot. Using either one of these moves will reduce your blue power meter at the top, so you can only use them a certain amount of times. But once you have all the gargoyles defeated, you can move on to the next screen, in which you'll encounter a huge boss enemy. You can basically just spam this guy with a bunch of moves until he dies, and that's literally the end of the game. That's all there is to it. You can probably speedrun this game in a minute. It's just so short. It's a cool attempt at a fantasy beat-em-up type of game, but there's just not a whole lot to it, so I probably give this game a C+. Next up, we have a 3D space shooter called Dream On. I'm not really sure what's up with the name. Maybe the students were big fans of Aerosmith, I have no idea. But it's your pretty typical space shooter where you just fly around. You can use the trigger buttons to speed up or slow down. You have a couple different weapons. You have your laser, and you also have a secondary weapon, which in the beginning of the game is a missile, but you can actually go to a space station and go to the shop and buy different weapons. Unfortunately, the game will crash when you highlight a certain weapon. I forget which one that is, but the game will just go black and you can't continue, which is unfortunate. But the shop does work otherwise, as long as you don't select that one weapon. You can also select a mission from the space station, which will have a different goal, and it will give you money if you complete the mission. This particular one will have you shooting down a bunch of ships before they get through the Stargate-type portal over there. The second mission in the game has you flying through a series of rings. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get past this part, because I'm not really sure what order I'm supposed to go through the rings, even though it says I'm supposed to press the lock button to show which portal is next. I don't know. I couldn't really figure it out, but the game is pretty decent. It's a good take on a classic 3D space shooter. It seems like there's a pretty good variety of missions in the game. One thing I thought was kind of odd, though, is the fact that none of the enemies shoot back at you. At least not in the first two missions. Maybe the missions after that will have some actual enemies fighting you, but as far as the first mission, you're just basically shooting defenseless cargo ships. But, yeah, the game is not bad. Unfortunately, it does have that crashing issue at the shop where if you select that certain weapon, the game will crash. But other than that, the game actually seems to run pretty smoothly. The physics are pretty decent. When you run into another ship, you'll act accordingly, which is nice. So overall, there's a nice amount of polish in the game. The menus are nice, and it seems to have a pretty good variety. So I'm going to give this game a B+. And here we have the final and what is, in my opinion, the best game in the collection, and that is Chicken Chase. This thing is worth downloading just for Chicken Chase. It is a lot of fun. It can be played single player or multiplayer, and the goal of the game is very, very simple. Just grab the chicken and bring it back to the flag to score a point. Whoever has the most points at the end of the game wins. It's really that simple. But there are a couple ways that you can be stopped, and the first of which is by a weapon. You can pick up various weapons that are scattered on the ground, including a spear, a pitchfork, and a hatchet. And you can pick up these weapons and throw them at the other players and cause them to die and drop the chicken. Which is just, it's so hilarious watching this. There's even some voice acting in the game. I'm not exactly sure what they're saying, but it's just hilarious. And I love it. It's so much fun. And the other thing is, the chicken, at just random times, will turn into a giant killer chicken and start chasing you. Which is so cool. As soon as he catches up to you, you are dead. Everyone's dead, pretty much. You just want to run away from the chicken at that point. But it's such a simple concept, but at the same time, it's just so much fun. And I imagine it would be a blast in multiplayer. There's even another mode if you want to remove the chicken altogether. You can play Ultimate Fight, which is basically just an arena deathmatch with the weapons, and you just throw the weapons at each other and kill each other. That's a lot of fun as well, but yeah, definitely recommend grabbing the collection just for this game. I give this game an A. It well deserves that, and I gotta give props to the students who actually created this. This is great. Chicken Chase is awesome.
Dégage du con.
And there you have it, a look at the Epitech Collection for the Dreamcast. Even though a lot of these games are really nothing to write home about, it's still a cool look at the history of the Dreamcast and something I don't think a lot of people have heard of. But anyway, guys, I do highly recommend downloading this, if only to play Chicken Chase, because that game is so much fun. But anyway, guys, that is it for this video. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to comment, rate, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.